Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dollar Dialogue. This week we have episode number 46, which is about rolling in luxury, the economics behind Rolls-Royce with Ishfaq Rihun. So Rolls-Royce, as you are aware of, is a very luxurious brand, and often when we think about Rolls-Royce, we think of indulgences, flashy items for the rich to flaunt. But if we look closer, you'll find that brands like Rolls-Royce are not just manufacturing automobiles; they are also sort of engineering value perceptions, mastering market psychology, and also crafting economic dominance through scarcity and prestige. And Rolls-Royce is frankly more than a car. It's a status symbol, a cultural asset, and also a textbook case of how brand equity can translate into billions in revenue. For this week, we have Mr. Ishfaq Rihun, who is a freshman at the American International School of Dhaka. Mr. Ishfaq Rihun is a very passionate individual when it comes to finance, specifically regarding automobiles. To put some personal anecdotes, I've worked with Rihun for our Wharton Global Youth Competition, and he was one of the more intelligent and hardworking members that I've ever worked with in the Wharton Youth Competition. And he personally told me back then to invest in Rolls-Royce when it was hovering around, I believe, like 540, 550 British pounds, and then it sort of skyrocketed. So obviously, he has a lot of knowledge about Rolls-Royce and the stock market. He's an extremely passionate guy when it comes to finance, and he's also a very athletic guy, as he is part of the varsity football team as a freshman, which is extremely competitive. So, Mr. Rihun, is there anything else you would like to add to the introduction that I've just said?
No. I would like to say thank you, Ari, very much for the kind words. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Ishfaq Rihun. So, firstly, let's talk a bit about Rolls-Royce. So, as I've mentioned before, Rolls-Royce is more than a car. It's a status symbol and also a textbook case of how the brand equity can translate into billions. And to provide some statistics, despite producing fewer than 7,000 vehicles a year, Rolls-Royce remains one of the most profitable automobile companies in the world on a per unit basis. And the reason for this is because it operates outside the normal rules of supply and demand when we think about economics. For example, most companies think that raising prices would shrink demand, and that the reason for that is because consumers want to maximize their utility, so they don't want to spend as much on one product. Rather, they want to like spread out the distribution of the product. But for Rolls-Royce, it sort of has an opposite effect. Higher prices, as I've said before, would sort of deter consumers, but higher prices in the case of Rolls-Royce makes the product more desirable, not less. And that's essentially the power of prestige and the economic theory behind it is what we'll explore today. And this episode begins with the core concept of scarcity versus strategy. We'll look at how Rolls-Royce deliberately limits supply to elevate perceived value. We'll also unpack price elasticity, the Veblen effect, and also the unique behavioral patterns of high network individuals who see luxury goods not just as functional but also as performative, a way to signal taste, wealth, and social power. And we'll go beyond the glossy exterior and dig into Rolls-Royce's business model. Which sort of defines economic logic while also adhering to the fundamentals of value creation, branding, and market segmentation. And in a world where sustainability is increasing non-negotiable, we'll also examine how the brand is reinventing prestige with its electric model, the Spectre, while maintaining its core identity. So buckle up, because today's ride through economics of Rolls-Royce is more than just look into entry, and it's also an exploration of scarcity, psychological fuel, as deeper insight into one of the world's most exclusive brands. So, firstly, I would like to briefly mention that in 2023, Rolls-Royce produced around 6,032 cars, yet generated revenues well over $1 billion. And this is simply through the elite strategy rooted in scarcity, inelastic demand, and branding as capital. So luxury goods, unlike necessities, often follow different consumer psychology. Enter the Veblen effect, for example, a phenomenon where higher prices actually increase demand among affluent buyers because the good becomes more of a signal of status. And Rolls-Royce sort of leans into this. An average Rolls-Royce starting price is well above $400,000, and bespoke models frequently exceed $600,000. Therefore, the brand ensures that ownership is intentionally accessible, and the result, a self-reinforcing cycle of prestige, exclusivity, and higher margin. In fact, Rolls-Royce's average profit margin per car exceeds 30%, far surpassing mass market manufacturers like Toyota, which is very successful, or even Ford, which operates on a 4 to 10% margin. Therefore, Rolls-Royce is almost tripling the amount of profit margin than its competitors like Toyota. But also, the real innovation isn't just pricing; it's sort of also personalization. Over 90% of Rolls-Royce's buyers opt for bespoke customization, turning each vehicle into handicraft asset. Economically, this sort of transforms each car into sort of quasi monopoly, where the consumer perceives no substitutes, therefore driving price elasticity, inelasticity even further. And globally, the brand also has capitalized on shifting wealth dynamics. In 2023, for example, China, the US, and the Middle East were the top markets, which sort of reflects the rapid growth of ultra high net worth individuals in emerging economies. Notably, the average age of a Rolls Royce buyer dropped from 56 years in 2010 to around 40 years today. So, therefore, there are much younger, much tech rich clientele, which sort of is reshaping the luxury car market as well. So, with that being said, I see that Mr. Ishfaq Rihun has his hand raised. So, Mr. Ishfaq Rihun, is there anything else that you would like to the introduction of Rolls Royce?
I would just like to say like that the Rolls-Royce is a very successful company due to its exclusivity, and it's like not just his cars, it's holding stock account like his aerospace and defense, like their jet engines, which made their stock so successful. So I think you should listen to me when I told you to buy the stock.
Thank you, Mr. Ishfaq Rihun, for telling the viewers to purchase Rolls-Royce stocks. However, I would like to just mention that Dollar Dialogue does not endorse any purchasing of stock, as there is financial risk involved in that. Therefore, while Rolls-Royce might seem like a profitable stock to many, we still encourage for discretion and research and own individual research into purchasing any stock. So before talking about the prestige, it's also important to sort of understand the history of Rolls-Royce. So Rolls-Royce, if I'm not mistaken, from the silver ghost to the spectre, Rolls-Royce has sort of evolved into the global icon. And the story of Rolls-Royce, if I'm not mistaken, begins in 1904. When engineer Henry Royce and car dealer Charles Rolls met in Manchester with a shared ambition to create the best car in the world. And just 2 years later, the Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost was introduced, which is a vehicle so reliable that it completed around 14,371 miles endurance run, and earning global acclaim and establishing the brand's reputation for its engineering excellence. Therefore, that reputation wasn't just a marketing win, it sort of became the principal founding of a brand premium that persists even today. But by the 1920s, Rolls-Royce became more than a car manufacturer. It had become a signifier of sort of social class. In economic terms, it had captured market segmentation at the highest income elasticity tier, the top 1%. Its prices didn't cater affordability but to aspiration and identity. And as the global elite grew, so did Rolls-Royce's association with royalty, heads of state, and industrial magnates. For example, in 1931, Rolls-Royce acquired Bentley, further consolidating its position in the luxury market. But economic challenges hit in the 1970s, and the company split into two distinct entities: Rolls-Royce Motors, which was the cars, and Rolls-Royce Holding Aerospace, which Ishfaq was talking about. And fast forward to 1998, and Rolls-Royce Motor Cars was acquired by BMW, while the aerospace division remained independent. And under BMW, the brand underwent a complete repositioning with a new factory in Goodwood, England, and a renewed focus on ultra luxury, low volume production. And this shift wasn't just aesthetic, it represented a transition towards a post industrial value creation where the true product wasn't just a car, but the experience, the heritage, and the identity the car conferred. Today, the Rolls Royce evolution culminates in the Spectre, its first fully electric vehicle. And with the rise of environmental regulation and ESG investing, this isn't just a technological pivot, it's also a strategic response to changing macroeconomic conditions. So, with that being said, is there anything else that you guys would like to add to the conversation that I've just said? Mr. Ishfaq Rihun, Mr. Suprit Nagala, or Mr. Shazib Karim?
Mr. Shadab Kareem.
Yes, Mr. Rihun, is there anything that you would like to add?
No, I think you are explaining the brand very well. And if you'd like to ask me any questions, I'm here to answer. And can I ask you another question?
Got it, Mr. Rihun. Mr. Suprit Nagal, I see that your hand is raised. Is there anything else that you would like to add to the introduction?
To the introduction, no, you have covered it fabulously.
Yeah, fabulous introduction, Arnav. I'm married. I missed out.
Thank you, Mr. Suprit Nagala, Mr. Rihun, and Mr. Shazak Karim. So with that being said, let's delve into some of the economic aspects of Rolls-Royce. And firstly, it's important to understand scarcity, as well as scarcity, which is one of the key economic concepts that we learn in IB economics, and also and strategy, which is also one of the evaluation class tools that we learn. So for Rolls-Royce, the scarcity is a very interesting issue because for Rolls-Royce, what's interesting is that Rolls-Royce creates value through scarcity. In economics, in Introduction to Economics, for example, we learned that scarcity is the reason behind economics, because in Earth we have an limited number of resources and an unlimited amount of needs, which is why it creates to scarcity. And because of scarcity, companies must sort of allocate resources in a way which is sustainable and efficient. And Rolls-Royce does it in a way which is very, very interesting. And the way Rolls-Royce does it is essentially through creating a perceived inelasticity of demand. Rolls-Royce does not care about the affordability of the cars in any way, sense, or whatsoever. The average Rolls-Royce car, as I've mentioned before, is $400,000. That's like the average US average income, if I'm not mistaken, is around $80,000. So the average Rolls Royce is around 5 times the amount of what an average US individual earns. So that just goes on to show that Rolls Royce is a car not for everyone, and they do it through scarcity. Additionally, it's important to understand regarding Rolls Royce specifically, that Rolls-Royce approaches scarcity by intentionally limiting the production. And I think Ishfaq and Supit have talked about this as well. They do it through exclusivity, desirability, and the perceived value. Economically, as I've mentioned before, scarcity elevates the perceived value through the principles of supply and demand, because when the supply is limited and the demand is strong, consumers are willing to pay significantly higher prices. And Rolls-Royce essentially capitalizes on this by maintaining strict production limits, ensuring demand consistently exceeds the strategy. And this strategy not only perceives high prices but also ensures strong brand prestige. And personally, as I've mentioned before, Rolls-Royce does this through the bespoke craftsmanship, and also through targeting ultra high network individuals. And moving on, Rolls-Royce's future output going investment, there has been a expansion of the Goodwood factory in England, and the introduction of electric vehicles like the Spectre, which sort of indicates its commitment to the scarcity-driven business model. And Rolls-Royce is traditionally, when we think about a car, traditionally Rolls-Royce is very rooted in tradition and luxury, which is why it's particularly interesting that a brand like Rolls-Royce is even considering to go on electric. So this could be a sustainability issue, or this could very well be targeting new individuals. So this is my question to Mr. Ishfaq Rihun or Mr. Suprit Nagal or Mr. Shazib Kari, and anyone could answer. So Rolls-Royce, as you guys are aware of, is very rooted in tradition, and it's been in operation since early 1900s, and it targets ultra high network individuals. However, the fact that Rolls-Royce is also now manufacturing electric vehicles like the Spectre, it sort of makes me ponder, why is Rolls-Royce doing this? Is there any ulterior motive behind this, or is just Rolls-Royce targeting newer customer base? So anyone could answer this. I see that Mr. Ishfaq Rihun, you have your hand raised. Would you like to chime in?
Reasons. For example, why is Rolls-Royce making these cars electric? So first of all, future-proofing the brand, because a lot of governments are planning to ban petrol and diesel cars in the next 10 to 20 years. And for example, in the UK, they want to ban petrol cars by 2035. So I guess you could say Rolls-Royce is making their cars electric for the future, and environmental responsibility as well. For example, luxury customers today care about sustainability and their environmental impact. And EVs produce like zero emissions while driving, and it helps climate change and meets the stricter environmental laws put on these car brands. Also, Rolls-Royce, I think, also wants to stay ahead of the game, and like doesn't want to fall behind to brands like Tesla, Porsche, and Mercedes-Benz, because Mercedes also released their new electric Maybach, which is also like a very luxurious car only for high net worth individuals. And it meets the luxury market expectations with the latest technology, and it's just innovation, basically innovation. And high net worth individuals, I guess, really want this type of car because the Spectre had a lot of sales, and I think Rolls-Royce is planning to make more and more electric cars in the near future. So it's a good decision for Rolls-Royce to maybe go into the electric field. But I think they won't lose their tradition. They'll also make petrol cars as long as they don't get banned.
Mr. Suprit Nagal, I see that your hand is raised. Would you like to chime in?
I would love to. Okay, so according to me, I would feel that Rolls Royce is investing into electrical engines because they need to diversify. First of all, we know that the world is trying to move away from oil and move away from petroleum based fuels. And as a result, this would mean that the company would lose immense revenue. So, what they're trying to do, they're trying to get ahead of the, instead of, they're trying to get ahead of the final due date where even the US has set the UN and US has set a goal of eliminating all carbon emissions by 2050. So by with Rolls-Royce starting to work in the industry of electric vehicles and engines, they can get more time to eventually perfect their machine and ensure that their company stays afloat in the future. In addition, I would believe that the company is trying to diversify because, for instance, let's say what happened is that because being overly dependent on one industry, especially something as volatile as commercial uh, petroleum based vehicles, can be catastrophic. For instance, we know what happened in COVID-19 during the pandemic, because during the pandemic, people weren't able to travel. And because of people not being able to travel, uh, many car companies and their stocks crashed. However, if they diversify, for instance, Rolls Royce, uh, they have immense industry in commercial aviation and air travel. They have in commercial aviation, they produce engines, and they either sell the engines or lease the engines for very high prices. And by diversifying, a company is able to stay afloat on top of any sort of major event or catastrophic event. So let me continue talking about how Rolls-Royce has diversified. For instance, one major diversification move is their defense division, because this is a steady, often recession resistant business. So, for instance, what does Rolls-Royce do? They build engines for military jets, such as the Eurofighter Typhoon, and for naval vessels, including submarines and aircraft carriers. They're also the sole provider of nuclear propulsion systems for the UK's Royal Navy submarines, and that's a deep, strategic, and high barrier to entry market, because not just any random company can get into the defense industry of a country. And by being the sole nuclear propulsion system maker for the UK Royal Navy, the Rolls is able to maintain themselves as a monopoly in that area of this industry. In addition, from an economic standpoint, defense gives Rolls Royce a foundation of predictable revenue, because war is always happening, whether we like it or not. There's at least one war here or there, and by solidifying your position in defense, a company could very easily have predictable revenue and a counterbalance to the volatility of the world. And then we also have power systems, because this is another fascinating area of diversification. Rolls Royce focuses on energy generation and backup power systems, and they have so far started building engines and power modules for trains and marine vessels, mining and industrial equipment, as well as data centers and hospitals. In fact, they supply backup generators to Google, Facebook, and other major tech companies, which keeps data flowing even when the power grid fails. And then we also have Rolls Royce betting big on small nuclear, because, okay, so SMR is a small modular reactor, and Rolls-Royce is currently the leading UK government-backed initiative to design and build compact nuclear reactors. And unlike traditional plants, SMRs are prefabricated, cost-effective, and scalable. So, with the goal to create a low-carbon, reliable energy solution, with especially the UK with the net zero targets by 2050, the Rolls-Royce is betting big on nuclear reactors, and if this industry succeeds and starts growing, then it opens up a massive export potential to other countries as well. Imagine like Rolls-Royce would be able to sell clean modular nuclear energy to countries around the world, and this diversification is would be very beneficial to the company. In addition, we also have the future of flight. Rolls Royce has also diversified through global partnerships and joint ventures. For example, they've partnered with Airbus and Siemens in hybrid electric propulsion projects, as well as working with MTU in their power systems division to access broader industrial markets. And we can't forget about their Ultra Fan Engine program in collaboration with suppliers worldwide, creating innovation ecosystems and not just products. But the thing is, Rolls Royce also faces big challenges because many of the new bets like SMRs or electric aviation or even electric vehicles like Arib and Ishfaq just talked about are very capital intensive and may not turn profits for many years, if not even decades. And the thing is, Rolls Royce is also still recovering financially from the COVID era, and their diversification depends heavily on government policy, especially around defense and nuclear. But the thing is, what's clear is that Rolls Royce is not just going to wait around and let the market revolve around them, and they are ready to move with the economy. So that's all I have to say. And do you guys have anything to add?
That was very insightful knowledge, Mr. Supreet Nagala. So before adding anything else, I would also like to briefly move on to the next segment of our podcast, specifically talking about the understanding price elasticity and the Veblen effect in ultra luxury markets. So in the realm of ultra luxury goods, exemplified by brands like Rolls Royce, which operates under a unique set of economic principles that often defy conventional supply and demand models. So, at the heart of this phenomenon lies a profound understanding of price elasticity and the Veblen effect, which together explains why the ultra high network individuals, or as we call UHNWIs, not only tolerate but also often actively desire to pay more for certain products. So, the price inelasticity of demand occurs when the quantity demanded for a good changes very little in response to significant changes in its price. And for most everyday goods, a price increase typically leads to a decrease in demand. However, for ultra luxury items, the opposite is often true. So UHNWIs possess substantial disposable income, meaning that the absolute price of Rolls Royce, while astronomically high to the average consumer, represents a negligible fraction of their overall wealth. So consequently, even a 20 or 30% increase on a bespoke Rolls Royce is unlikely to deter a buyer whose network runs in the hundreds of millions of dollars or even billions. So their purchasing decisions are less about affordability and more about exclusivity, status, and the inherent value proposition of the brand. So statistically, the price elasticity of demand for such good approaches zero, which indicates extreme inelasticity. So this low inelasticity sort of empowers luxury brands to raise their prices without fear of significantly impacting sales volume, thereby maximizing revenue and profit margins. And complementing this, the Veblen effect, which is named after the economist Thorstein Veblen, describes a counterintuitive phenomenon where the demand for a good increases at its price increases precisely because of a higher price. So, unlike typical goods where utility is derived from functionality or intrinsic quantity, Veblen goods often derive significant utility from their status signaling functions. And for WH and UNHWI, so Rolls-Royce is not merely a transportation; it is a conspicuous display of wealth, success, and discerning taste. So, therefore, a higher price tag is a filter which ensures that only a select few can acquire the product, thereby enhancing its exclusivity and the desirability. And the very act of paying a premium becomes a status in itself, which sort of reinforces the buyer's position within the elite social spectrum. Additionally, I would also like to talk about the psychological underpinnings of the Veblen effect, which are crucial here. UHNWIs often seek to differentiate themselves from others, and owning items that are prohibitively expensive for the vast majority serves this purpose effectively. The perception of value is intrinsically linked to price. A lower price might even devalue the product in the eyes of these consumers, which sort of strips away its exclusionary appeal. And this is a subtle yet a powerful dynamic. The higher the price, the greater the perceived prestige, and thus the stronger the desire to acquire it. Data analytics for luxury brands often show a positive correlation between price and demand within certain segments. Therefore, the Rolls-Royce is a direct manifestation of the Veblen good. So, in a sense, Rolls-Royce strategically leverages both price inelasticity and the Veblen effect. And by setting exorbitant prices, they not only maximize profit but per unit, but also cultivate an aura of extreme exclusivity that fuels demand among their target demographic. So, considering the deep seated psychological and social motivations behind the Veblen effect, do you guys believe, and this is my question to you, so considering the deep psychological and social motivations, do you believe the rise of quiet luxury where discretion and understated quality are prioritized over assert ostentation, which sort of represents a fundamental shift away from or merely a sophisticated evolution of the Veblen effect for a new generation of ultra high net worth individuals? And this question applies to Mr. Suprit Nagala, Mr. Shazib Karim, or Mr. Ishfaq Rihun.
To further answer Arif's question, for decades, Rolls-Royce has occupied a unique and almost mythic place in the world of luxury. Its name alone conjures images of handcrafted excellence, elite status, and unapproachable exclusivity. Traditionally, the brand thrived on what economists call the Veblen effect, a concept developed by Thorstein Veblen in the late 19th century that explains how some products see increased demand as their price rises. In this model, consumers purchase luxury goods not merely for their functional use, but because they symbolize wealth and power.
Unfortunately, Ishfaq had to depart for a few minutes because he had network issues. He'll be rejoining us soon. Okay, so the rise of quiet luxury is not a departure from the Veblen effect, but rather a refined metamorphosis of it, retooled for an era of hyper awareness, economic polarization, and performative discretion. So, at its core, the Veblen effect hinges on conspicuous consumption, the psychological signaling that comes from owning something rare, expensive, and socially recognized. I believe that in the past this meant logos, flamboyance, and visible wealth. But for today's ultra high net worth individuals, also known as UHNWIs, especially younger generations shaped by privacy concerns, backlash against inequality, and a culture of subtle signaling, loud luxury has become almost gauche. So let's have a look at quiet luxury. Think Loro Piana, the Row, Brunello Cucinelli speaks in the language of informed exclusivity. Its power lies in code, the cut of a jacket, the texture of the fabric, or a shoe, only recognizable to those in the know. Its scarcity, not through limited supply, but through limited recognizability. In this way, quiet luxury is actually a more elite iteration of the Veblen effect, one that filters out the masses not by price alone, but by cultural literacy. So it's about not stepping away from signaling wealth. It's about shifting the audience. Traditional Veblen goods signal to the many. Quiet luxury signals to the few who matter in a specific social or economic stratum. This exclusivity isn't just economic anymore. It's epistemological. So if you have to ask what it is, you're not in the club. So is this a fundamental shift? No, bruh. No, sorry, that was inappropriate of me. No, it's a strategic evolution. The underlying drive, status through distinction, remains. So what's changed is the aesthetic dialect and audience calibration. So in this sense, quiet luxury represents a stealth wealth sophistication of the Veblen effect, perfectly tuned for a generation that seeks prestige without provocation.
Thank you, Mr. Suprit Nagala, for that insightful response. Unfortunately, Mr. Rihun's internet cut bit short, and Mr. Shazib Kareem is currently facing shortage in his house for electricity, which is why Shazib has unable to contribute much to the meeting. However, we hope that Ishfaq Rihun will be able to join promptly. However, with that being said, I would like to briefly talk about Rolls-Royce's diversification into other sectors. So, while the exquisite luxury cars are often what we associate with Rolls-Royce's name, the company known as Rolls-Royce Holdings PLC, which is what Mr. Rihun was referring to when he said it's a good company to invest in, is a vastly diversified global engineering powerhouse, with its automotive design actually having been separated and sold to BMW in 1998. And the primary focus of Rolls-Royce holdings today is on advanced power and propulsion systems for various critical sectors. For example, in the civil aerospace, I think Mr. Suprit Nagala was talking about this. This is arguably the largest and most recognizable segment of Rolls-Royce's holdings. They are a world-leading manufacturer of aero engines for large commercial aircraft, regional jet, and business aviation. And their Trent series of engine powers numerous wide-body aircraft for major airlines globally. They also provide extensive aftermarket services, including maintenance, repair, and overhaul MRO, which generates significant long-term revenue. And their continuous innovation in this sector focuses on efficiency and sustainability, which is crucial for the future of commercial aviation. Defense-wise, Rolls-Royce is a critical supplier of advanced power solutions for military, air, and naval forces worldwide. This includes the aero engines for military support and combat aircraft, as well as the propulsion systems for naval vessels. A particularly vital and unique aspect of their defense division is the provision of nuclear propulsion systems for all of the UK Royal Navy submarine. This segment emphasizes the high performance, reliability, and security, often involving long term government contracts. In terms of power system, Rolls-Royce also dominates that. Operating largely under the MTU brand, this division provides high-speed reciprocating engines which complete propulsion and drive systems and distributed energy solutions. Their products are used in a diverse range of applications, including marine propulsion for commercial vessels, yachts, and governmental ships, emergency power for safety-critical installations like data centers and hospitals, heavy land vehicles like mining trucks and railway locomotives, powerful generation, including diesel and gas powered systems, as well as the division increasingly focusing on sustainable solutions. And moving on, the new markets, the Rolls-Royce is also segmenting into developing and commercializing new, often cutting-edge power solutions. A significant part of this is their small modular reactor (SMR) business. Rolls-Royce is at the forefront of designing and deploying compact factory-built nuclear reactors, which are seen as a key technology for low carbon energy generation in the future. They're also heavily investing in advanced electrical power systems, driving the transition to all electric and hybrid electric propulsion, particularly for the emerging advanced air mobility or the AAM market. So, in essence, Rolls-Royce is more than a luxury car. Rolls-Royce Holdings PLC has diversified far beyond luxury automobiles to become a critical player in global propulsion and power, which sort of leverages its engineering heritage to serve vital industries. So, with that being said, I have a question for Mr. Ishfaq Rihun. Since Mr. Ishfaq Rihun is very knowledgeable about Rolls-Royce. So, Mr. Ishfaq Rihun, what do you think is the biggest challenge for a company like Rolls-Royce in balancing its long-standing heritage with the need for cutting-edge innovation in new markets?
When we talk about the biggest challenge for a company like Rolls-Royce in balancing its long-standing heritage with the need for cutting-edge innovation, it's important to understand that this tension isn't confined to just one product line, or sector. It runs through every facet of their diverse business, from ultra-luxury automobiles to aerospace engineering and beyond. For example, the one of the sectors is the automotive division. The brand's core identity is wrapped around this handcrafted luxury and the unparalleled attention they give to their bespoke vehicles. The challenge here is monumental. How do you introduce disruptive technologies like electric drivetrains, advanced infotainment, or autonomous driving, all hallmarks of the future automotive landscape, without undermining the sensory experience and craftsmanship that defines a Rolls Royce? For example, a Rolls Royce is famous for It's near silent, smooth ride, often described as a magic carpet. Switching to electric aligns well with their silent operation, but electric motors offer a fundamentally different experience than a V12 engine. Rolls-Royce is historically known for that. So balancing this shift without I can't answer anymore. I could.
I believe Mr. Rihun was facing internet difficulties. Mr. Supreet Nagala, would you like to chime in and answer the question, which I think is particularly interesting?
You're right. This is extremely intriguing, and I would love to chime in. So, I would feel that the biggest challenge for a company like Rolls Royce is the differentiation between cultural inertia versus innovation urgency. So, what do I mean by this? I mean that the challenge is in balancing the century old heritage with the demands of cutting edge innovation, and this would lie in navigating the tension between legacy and agility. So, what so let's have a deeper dive. So Rolls-Royce's heritage is rooted in precision, safety, and elite engineering, values that demand rigorous processes and long development cycles. But new markets like electric aviation, hydrogen propulsion, and modular nuclear energy require startup level agility, experimentation, and a tolerance for failure. So this creates a cultural clash. How do you maintain the meticulous engineering mindset while fostering the rapid iteration needed for disruptive innovation? Moving and in addition, there's one other big challenge that I see. It is brand perception and the risk associated with it. Because Rolls Royce and the name carries expectations, it carries unmatched quality, reliability, and prestige. And this legacy is an asset, but also at the same time a burden. Because if they take bold leaps into new markets and stumble while diversifying, say with a failed electric engine program or delays in SMRs, then the reputational damage would be extraordinarily severe. So, in essence, they're innovating under a brand microscope where missteps can feel more costly than for less iconic competitors. Moving on, there's also capital allocation between old and new because the company knows that they must continue supporting its existing businesses while also diversifying. For instance, like jet engine maintenance under power by the hour, while also investing heavily in next gen tech that may not yield returns for a decade. And balancing capital and resources between cash generating heritage divisions and speculative innovation creates internal tension and strategic risk. Because, yes, we know that Rolls Royce is trying to get into the EV market, the electric vehicles market. However, while trying to get in there, there are so many other competitors, and they might not choose Rolls Royce for their EVs because Rolls Royce and the brand has a heritage connected with uh, con- typical or expected reliable oil based vehicles. And as a result, this would create internal tension and strategic risk while diversifying. In addition, there is also regulatory complexity because while they're starting to branch into sectors like small modular reactors in the UK or hybrid electric aviation, Rolls Royce is entering new regulatory regimes with unfamiliar rules, expectations, and approval timelines. And their traditional expertise doesn't automatically transfer and will most definitely slow down progress and inflate costs.
Thank you, Mr. Supreet Nagal and Mr. Rihun, for that very insightful response. I wholeheartedly agree with the conversation that you guys said. Moving on, I would lastly like to talk about the final segment of this series, no, of this podcast, which is about brand economics and behavioral finance, which is particularly interesting. And I know Mr. Rihun also is very knowledgeable about behavioral finance and the power of aspiration, perception, and identity in luxury purchasing. So previously, we have talked a lot about the fact that Rolls-Royce transcends purely rational economic considerations. And while quality, performance, and features are certainly factors, the core drivers of demand in the ultra luxury market are deeply rooted in behavioral finance and the intricate interplay of aspiration, perception, and identity. And this is where the brand economic takes on a distinct psychological dimension. So, aspiration as a fuel for desire is a very powerful human motivator, which sort of represents the desire to achieve or possess something that signifies a higher standard of living, greater success, or an enhanced social standing. And for many, a Rolls Royce embodies a pinnacle of achievement, a tangible representation of having made it. This aspirational value is meticulously cultivated by luxury brands through their marketing, storytelling, and product design. And they just don't sell a car, they sell the dream, the lifestyle, and the sense of accomplishment that comes along with owning it. And this creates a deep emotional connection where the product becomes a goal in itself, which sort of drives consumers to work towards acquiring it, even if it requires significant financial planning or long term saving strategy. And the pursuit of this aspirational good can even trigger a dopamine release in the brain, making the anticipation of owning almost as pleasurable as the actual purchase. And now I would like to also talk about the perception versus reality. In the luxury market, perception often outweighs objective reality. A Rolls Royce isn't just a perceived high quality, it's perceived as unquestionably the best, even if a direct blind comparison with a competitor might reveal minimal functional differences. And this perception is built on decades of meticulous brand building, consistent messaging, and a strong association with excellence, exclusivity, and heritage. Consumers rely on brand cues, the iconic spirit of STC, the silent glide, the hand stitch interiors to sort of validate their perceptions of unparalleled quality and value. And this psychological heuristic, where the higher price often equates to higher perceived quality, where the Veblen effect in action, further reinforces the purchasing decisions. Moreover, social perception plays a critical role too. Owning a Rolls Royce signals a certain status, power, and discernment to one's peers and wider world. Lastly, identity and self perception is also important. Perhaps the most profound behavioral driver in luxury consumption is a role of identity. A luxury product becomes an exterior extension of one's self concept, a means to express who they are, what they value, and who they are, what they value, as well as their alignment with the exclusive group. And this customization often that accompanies with Rolls Royce further amplifies this, allowing individuals to sort of imbue the vehicle with their unique personality and preferences, making it truly their own. And this deep connection between brand and consumer identity fosters brand loyalty and a willingness to pay a premium. And the purchase is not just about the product's attributes, it's about validating and enhancing one's personal social identity. So, with that being said, I would like to ask Mr. Ishfaq Rihun a question. And this is probably going to be our last question for today. So, Mr. Ishfaq Rihun, Rolls Royce as a car manufacturer has obviously has many diversification in many of the different industries. So, what part of Rolls Royce's strategy do you find the most interesting, or what part of Rolls Royce's strategy is would you consider the most successful? Because Rolls Royce, frankly, employs a lot of different strategies, as mentioned in the video, like behavioral finance, or even the fact that they utilize the inelastic demand of the car market, or even the Veblen goods. So, what do you guys think? What do you think is Rolls Royce's most effective strategy in it being so successful that it is today? Mr. Ishfaq Rihun, Mr. Suprit Nagala, Mr. Shazib Kareem. Yes, Mr. Rihun, I see that your hand is raised.
What I find most interesting about Rolls Royce's strategy is how they seamlessly integrate innovation with their heritage driven brand identity, especially their bold commitment to electrification and sustainability without compromising the luxury
True.
and craftsmanship that define them.
True.
Many many legacy brands struggle to modernize without alienating their core customers, but Rolls-Royce is taking a sophisticated approach. For example, the launch of the Spectre, the first fully electric car, shows how they're reimagining what luxury means in a future where silence, sustainability, and cutting-edge tech are equally important as a tradition and a part of bespoke design. It's fascinating how they're not just chasing trends but crafting innovation that feels like a natural evolution of their values, like using electric power to enhance the smooth ride that Rolls Royce has always promised. Beyond cars, the aerospace and power system divisions demonstrate a similarly forward thinking mindset by investing heavily in clean energy technologies and digital and making everything digital and their advanced manufacturing, which reflects a broad strategic vision to lead across multiple industries. I also find their approach to talent and culture and transformation compelling, in balancing the centuries-old craftsmanship with modern engineering and digital skills, ensuring they're not just innovating products, but also the way they work. This multi-dimensional strategy of blending past, present, and future in a cohesive way is what makes Rolls-Royce's approach so fascinating and worthy of attention.
Thank you, Mr. Ishfaq Rihun, for that insightful response. I truly agree with the comment that you have made regarding Rolls Royce. I do believe that Rolls Royce, in and of itself, is successful because, as I mentioned, due to their behavioral factor. And as humans, and like Rihun, you are in grade 9, and Miss Supri, you're in grade 10. And when you take economics next year, Mr. Spivey, who's our economics teacher, he will say that often in economics there's this concept of bounded rationality and bounded self-control, which is basically that consumers want to maximize their utility, and consumers want to sort of utilize their money to sort of to buy products that are essentially the most useful to them, not that it is most expensive. And therefore, because of this, I would say that it is very interesting, in my opinion, to that Rihun, what you have said, that Rolls Royce delves into behavioral finance. And before we end our discussion for today, is there any final comments that any of you guys would like to make, Mr. Suprit Nagala, Mr. Ishfaq Rihun, or Mr. Shazib Karim? Any comments regarding our final conclusion for Rolls Royce?
Not for Rolls Royce, but I think you've been a great host. And since it's my first time speaking in a Dollar Dialogue, and I know there's many more to come, I'm very grateful for this opportunity that you've presented with me, Mr. Arif and Subit Nagala and Shazab Kareem. Uh, so thank you for having me here. And we had a nice talk about Rolls Royce.
And me personally, I would like to add on, because Rolls Royce, it's not just a car; it's a mirror reflecting wealth, power, and the paradoxes of our modern economy. As we admire the craftsmanship and legacy behind every model and the economics behind Rolls Royce, we also need to ask harder questions. Who gets to ride in luxury and who gets left behind? In a world facing inequality and disparities, climate urgency, and shifting values, perhaps true luxury isn't about owning more, but about choosing better.
Thank you, Mr. Subrit Nagala, for the final concluding words, and Mr. Ishfaq Rihun. Thank you all. Thank you again for the final concluding words. It was a very fun time hosting this podcast and having this conversation with a car enthusiast like yourself, who is very knowledgeable about Rolls Royce. So, viewers, that is all for today. This is a very interesting episode in the sense that we haven't done episodes on automobiles as much. So if this video gets or if this episode gets very higher views than usual, we will consider employing more automobile videos and tying it to economics, and as well as hoping to get Mr. Ishfaq Rihun as well, who is very knowledgeable in the car automotive sector. So, viewers, that is all for today, which is episode 46, which was about rolling in luxury, the economics behind Rolls Royce, with Mr. Ishfaq Rihun. So, thank you for watching today, and we'll see you next week with another very interesting topic with another very interesting guest speaker. So, that is all for today, and goodbye.